in our chalk talk, wind awareness. Okay, so that just means that you know about the wind, and you really need to know about the wind as a sailor because the wind is your engine, right? The engine on a sailboat is just, we call it auxiliary, which means it's extra. It's only when you need it. The wind is actually, that's actually your engine, right? That's the power of your boat. And everything you do on a sailboat has to do with the direction and the speed, or sometimes we use the word pressure of the wind. Okay, so you have to know where the wind is coming from and how fast it's coming or how much pressure there is in it in order to sail your boat safely and get where you're going. So that's why we want to learn about wind awareness. It's like the most important thing in sailing. So you have to learn it. And it's not that hard. It's pretty simple, actually. So we're going to talk about it now. My name is Meg, and I'll be your instructor. So a wind indicator is anything that you observe that gives you information about the direction and the speed of the wind. When we talk about the direction of the wind, we always talk about it where the wind is coming from, not where the wind is going to. It's where it's coming from. Okay? So you talk about the wind in terms of cardinal directions, you would say the wind is northeast. That means the wind is coming from the northeast, not going to the northeast. Okay? So you have to always remember it's where the wind is coming from. If someone says there's a northeast wind, it means the wind is coming from the northeast. And when we are sailing, we talk about upwind, which is where the wind is coming from. So in that case, northeast would be upwind, and downwind is where the wind is going. Okay, so when you're sailing, if the wind is up here, then this is upwind, right? You're sailing towards the wind. That's upwind. And sailing this way is downwind, right? This way is downwind. This way is downwind. This way is upwind. These two are special. They're neither upwind or downwind. That's called a reach. But we'll talk about that another day. So wind awareness. It's very important that you have ways that you can tell how fast the wind is. So one of those indicators we look at is the ripples in the water. So more ripples closer together means faster wind speed. Glassy water or fewer ripples indicates slower or less wind. Okay, so I want to go over a few wind indicators with you. The first one we talked about is the water. You can look at the water. There are parts of the water, special indicators in the water that you want to look at. We talked about ripples in the water, and that changes sort of the color of the surface of the water or the texture of the surface of the water. And that's going to indicate puffs, gusts, more wind, less wind. You can see wind coming towards you from the water as you're sailing forward. If you see a glassy spot and up ahead of you, you see a not glassy spot, you're going to hit a gust. So the ripples are good indicators of gusts and puffs. We also look at whitecaps. That's a very important wind indicator because whitecaps can tell you the speed of the wind. Whitecaps start to form between 10 and 12 knots of breeze. So that can help you know, even if you don't have a wind meter on board, you're sailing a simple little boat, a dinghy, or a simple keel boat, you can still look at the water, and when you see whitecaps out there, you're going to know the wind is at least 10 to 12 knots. Another thing is the rigging on a boat. So the standing rigging on a boat will whistle. And when the rigging on a boat starts to whistle, that usually indicates at least 18 to 20 knots. Okay, so that's a good time to start thinking about reefing, and we'll talk about reefing again. But it's important that you know these, wind ranges. You hear whistling in the rigging, that's 18 to 20. You see whitecaps, that's 10 to 12. So those are wind indicators. So we said whistling, we said whitecaps, we said the water surface texture, right? And there's one more this is a drawing of a Melgis 24, which is the keelboat that we have at the Sailing Center to teach basic keelboat and also to race for fun. When you look at your sails, you're going to notice off of the first two battens, usually on the mainsail, there are these little red strings. We call those tails, right? Because a tail is like a story, right? So these telltales tell you a story about the wind. And we'll learn what they mean later on. That's not important, but what you need to know is that when you're sailing, there are red ones and there are green ones. And on the jib of your boat, you're going to see them along this front edge here. Red ones and green ones on the other side of the sail. Okay? And those tell you everything about your apparent wind. So the wind that's moving the boat, that's in your sails, these telltales are super important. They're like your most important wind indicator, okay? So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to write telltales. And there's one more that I want to add. Down here that I think is super important. So that's the fifth one. And I'm going to go ahead and just say ears. Okay. The ears on your head are great wind indicators. They're great for speed because you can feel the pressure on the on your ears. You can feel how strong the wind is. But the other thing is, if your face is here, and I'm going to draw a really bad face, but say that's your face. Goodness, that's the worst face. Let me try again. I'm going to try again. I think I can draw a better profile than that. I'm going to draw a face like this. And he's not got any head, but here's his nose, and here's his chin, and there's a face. As you rotate your head around side to side on your shoulders, you're going to hear the wind or feel the wind on one ear. And as you turn, it's going to go from one ear to both ears equally and then the other ear. And when you hear and feel wind on both ears, oh goodness, not writing well today, on both ears equally, your face is upwind. Your face is pointing to the wind. So if your sailing coach tells you point to the wind, which we say that a lot, point to the wind, you're going to use your face and your ears and you're going to turn it back and forth until you get equal pressure, equal sound on both ears and then point. And that is going to be the direction of the wind. So the ears are one of my very favorite wind indicators because it helps beginners find the wind, the upwind angle, right? The exact upwind axis of the wind. Okay, that is wind indicators. And I hope that you will remember these wind indicators. We said 5 really good ones. The texture, oops, that's not what I meant to do. We did 5 really good ones. And just to review, the ripples and surface texture of the water, whistling in the rigging, which will mean what, 18 to 20 knots? whitecaps in the water, at least 10 to 12 knots, and the telltales on your sails. And then my favorite for beginners,